Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the cryptoverse. This is NFA Live, coming at you every Thursday. We'll just go and ask a few questions to both Rob and Guy. How are you guys doing today? Guy, how are you doing today?
I'm well, thanks, Ben. How are you?
Doing pretty good. Rob, how about you?
Pretty good. Not as
You lost your
I'm
green
doing
screen?
better than the. Yeah, I had to switch green screens. I mean, once the altcoin season goes, I can't afford all these expensive stuff. So, away with the pool.
Well, if you guys are not subscribed to either Guy or Rob, make sure you do so. Links are in the description below. And let's go ahead and jump in to the topics of the day. So I guess we will start off with Rob's favorite topic, as always. So Bitcoin dominance hit 64%, and this is a big move, right? It's a big move, and we know the Fed never ended quantitative tightening, and so dominance went higher. Do you think it's going to turn around anytime soon? Because I mean, this is one of those things where it seems like it doesn't do anything for a long time.
Yeah.
Kind of bringing people to a false sense of security that it's going to go down, and then you wake up and it just goes up another few percent. So I'm curious, Rob, and we'll start with you on this one. When's it going to turn? I mean, do you think it's going to turn around anytime soon, or is this just going to keep going on for a while?
I think it kind of just, it's one of those things where when you think things are going to happen, it does the exact opposite, right? So like with Bitcoin dominance, you would say, well, this is the time for the altcoin market because this is historically usually when things turn. But this is we're in uncharted waters right now. I've never had a president that is pro digital assets. I never had a president and his company launch two meme coins, one that kind of failed and one that is lingering. I've never had where the SEC is actually more pro Bitcoin or crypto than what they actually are. And we've never, and I got to tell you, I don't know how many czars that we've had in the United States as far as for their cabinet, but it seems like everybody's a czar now. Now, David Sachs is a czar for AI and digital assets. Well, we never had that before. So these are strange times. And I think when people are looking at it, and we'll get into the strategic reserve talk in a bit, but I think when people look for like the safe route, they look for, what is as far as risk versus reward. And with an ETF, it makes things a heck of a lot easier. But I mean, if I use this website every so often to talk about dominance, and if you can pull it up for me, it's not a bad place to start. So when I'm taking a look at this, and when they say like this time it's different, I really do think this time is a little bit different. I know this will probably change tomorrow because I said that, but sure. But if you just take a look at, I mean, if we're talking about 4-year cycles, everything in red, this red here is Bitcoin dominance. So as far as 4-year cycles, if we go back, 2020 was the halving year. I think it was April or so, April 2020. And then we fast forward to January 2021, which is when the bull run really took off. Market, I didn't realize it was this high. Bitcoin dominance was 70% back then.
It actually went to 73.
Oh, see, there you go, 73.
Yeah.
If someone would just update their website. No, I'm just kidding. So
it was on an intraday wick. Get off my back.
Hey, I'm just trying to make sure that's accurate. So we go from here from 71.6 here, 73 as Ben talks about. But look at this, it just goes down and down and down. And then there's a little bit of pumps here, 62%. No one's really, I mean, that's interesting today. And then it just kind of goes it just languishes for a bit until everything collapses and then it shoots back up. But of course, when you see things, when Bitcoin dominance goes down, then of course, we got to take a look at, where is the altcoins? And it's the exact inversion. So I do like this part about your website, Ben, this workbench. I can just put in every type of metric that I want to. So like with this one, I could show you a Pepe coin dominance chart, but this one's more liking for what we're talking about. But dominance, I mean, as we go down in this green is market cap TM5, which is the market cap, which excludes stables and Ethereum, excludes Bitcoin and stable coins. And we just see there's a nice inversion. So once Bitcoin dominance starts to go down, you see altcoins go up. And then it's the altcoin season. Everybody's happy. for right now, do I see it going anywhere but up? I mean, only time will tell, but if you're looking for something safe, this would be the play to do it. I don't know exactly when these altcoins will start to run, but one of the big problems is there's too many damn altcoins. This is from Dune Forecasts. As of January 2025, there are over 36.4 million crypto tokens. And we're on track to reach 100 million by the end of 2025. That's called dilution. So, and then for context, they said it was 3,000 tokens in 2017. So if we're taking a look at this right now, there's a lot of dilution where things are going. I think the meme coins did pretty well when people like to gamble, but at some point you got to realize that you're losing your A, and you want to go into something a little bit less risky. And then I think people are going this way. The only problem I can see is like people look at it and go, I can't afford $98,000 or whatever it is today. I think if we could educate them more that, hey, you can buy $20 worth of Bitcoin and go from there. I think that would be a big, big push. I agree.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's certainly interesting because this, the dominance just continues to go higher, which, I mean, as you said, this is the narratives are strong for it. Monetary policies in favor for it. You also have the spot ETFs, right? There's just a lot of stuff. So it's been an interesting cycle, to say the least. Guy, what are your thoughts? Will we see dominance go down this year, or will this just be one of those years where people keep thinking it's going to drop, and then it just keeps on going higher?
Yeah, it's a great question. And Ben, before I forget, before I start rambling, at the end of this question, I'd love to know how high you think it might go this year, because I mean you've been pretty spot on with it so far. Yeah, I mean, when I was thinking about this question, I was thinking like, what is going likely to attract capital away from Bitcoin? And yeah, I think it's a great point that you make, that we've got these spot ETFs as well. I think you can also factor in the fact that it seems like if accumulation at a national level isn't about to take place, it might actually be taking place as we speak. So not only do you have capital being effectively siloed in spot ETFs for Bitcoin, but you've also got nation states potentially buying it as well. And our nation state, I mean, a lot of them might be buying it via ETFs, or they might be mining it, or they might be buying it OTC or whatever. But are they going to rotate into altcoins? Are they going to dip their toes in the altcoin casino? I kind of don't think so. So what is going to attract capital to rotate out of Bitcoin and into something else? In previous cycles, ETH was the obvious answer. ETH and Ethereum are really struggling, and I think we're gonna get into that a little bit later on. So I won't sort of front run it here, but like ETH just isn't the magnet for capital that it was anymore. And as you pointed out many times, Ben, the ETH BTC chart is one of the most terrifying, horrific sites in all of crypto. So, where is this capital going to go? I was thinking about it. Like, obviously, there's talk of more altcoin ETFs being approved this year. I think that will happen. I mean, there's some in my opinion, some fairly strange candidates being talked about. Litecoin might get an ETF. But would, for instance, an XRP or Solana ETF, would that attract capital? I think it would, but would it attract enough capital to make a dent in Bitcoin dominance? I think that's a bit of a long shot. Another potential game changer, and I say that very qualified. I say the words game changer in a very qualified sense, but something that might make a difference is if you get staking for these Ethereum. Obviously, we have spot ETH ETFs. If we get a staking component added to those, that could make a difference, because, as we've talked about many times, institutions like income. They like passive income. They like to earn a yield. as does as does any sensible investor. At the moment, you don't have that with the spot Ethereum ETFs, and that's probably a big part of why they've been fairly disappointing. I mean, I should say they have actually been seeing some reasonable inflows recently, so you can't write them off. But they've been, compared to the spot Bitcoin ETFs, they've been a real lead balloon. So if you were to add a staking component to that, possibly, because one of the things that sort of we've argued for a while is that that's what institutions want. They want yield, and at the moment they're able to get a better yield, or they're able to get a yield through US Treasuries. So they buy that. If they're able to buy and stake and earn a yield through a spot Ethereum ETF, maybe. Again, would that make a huge dent in Bitcoin dominance? I don't think so. And then then you get into the idea that actually these spot Bitcoin ETFs aren't as fully integrated with wirehouses, etc., yet as they are going to be. And one of the things that really stuck out for me at the turn of the year was Bitwise. Matt Hogan, the CEO of Bitwise, he made a point, I think, when he was talking to the Bankless guys, and he said, look, historically, ETFs tend to outperform, or tend to perform much better in their second and third years than they do in their first. Now, obviously, the spot Bitcoin ETFs have had an absolutely incredible first year. If they follow that trajectory, then what hope does anything have of any cryptocurrency have of attracting capital away from Bitcoin? That's not. That's by no means guaranteed. We don't know for certain, of course, that the spot Bitcoin ETFs will follow that trajectory. But that is certainly, that's certainly something that the guys at Bitwise have observed with other ETFs in the past. So there's a pretty good chance that will happen. And then my final 2 points are, to underline what Rob said. We've got new launches coming all the time. I mean, Berachain launched today. This enormous launch. Everyone's getting excited about Berachain. We've got other big launches coming up. I mean, I think this month, February, is massive. We've got a whole load of some really cool projects being launched, but they're going to attract capital. Whether that capital will stick around, I don't know. And that's before we've even talked about token emissions. It's not just new projects launching, projects that are live, and in some cases have been live for years, are still, there's vesting cliffs, there's token emissions, there's staking rewards, etc. I mean, there is hundreds of millions of dollars just of emissions hitting the market in the next few months, which adds to what you were saying, Rob, about dilution. So there's this huge pool of altcoins, all heavily diluting each other. What is Bitcoin, and all rivals to each other? What is Bitcoin's rival? Gold. That's and that's what makes it such an easy narrative for these investors to understand. These people who are new to crypto to understand. Digital gold, fine, easy. I understand that. Take my money, and look at gold. I mean, gold just hit a new all-time high, and so I guess it kind of makes sense that Bitcoin is holding up as well. That's and I guess Trump tariffs, Trump causing mayhem, talking about Greenland and Canada and tariffs and all this stuff in the Middle East. People are looking for, it seems like people are looking for a safe haven asset. So again, it's kind of hard to see where it's kind of hard to see Bitcoin dominance doing anything other than going up. Sorry, I rambled a bit there.
No, I mean,
it's good.
It's good to have people on to give their opinions on this stuff, because I mean, it's hard to know. It's hard to know exactly what's going to happen. And one of the, as you guys mentioned, one of the main reasons that the dominance is doing so well is because ETH Bitcoin continues to just simply capitulate. I mean, it went as low as 0.023 this week. I think we'd previously talked about a few months ago, we might see a big capitulation as the supply of ETH reaches the pre-merge supply, kind of like undoing the whole like deflationary argument. And that happened like 2 days ago. So maybe it's in the final stages, or maybe not. It's really hard to know. do you think? I mean, there's Bitcoin dominance, but there's also, I mean, there obviously ETH going down pulls dominance higher, right? But there's also other things in the market as well, right? Like alt Bitcoin pairs, like total 3 divided by Bitcoin just put in a new low. Others divided by Bitcoin just put in a new low, right? So it's not just ETH sending Bitcoin dominance higher. But I'm curious, I mean, do you think that ETH Bitcoin will turn around? Um, I know, I think for a lot of us, including me, like I assume that it will one day, and maybe that day is after QE comes back, because that's when it turned around last cycle, right? But I mean, is there any risk of it not, and just continuing to drop? And I mean, like I feel like we've been here before. Like we've been in this situation in like 2019, when ETH Bitcoin was dropping, and then it eventually bottomed, and then eventually recovered and went back up. Um, do you think the risk of that is high? I mean, or is Ethereum gonna stick around? Like, is it gonna stay number 2 for a while and take back some of that market share, maybe later on this year or early 2026? Or is that it? Right? Is that it? And there's a new sheriff in town. Either
You
one
want
of you
to take that
guys.
one? I'll let Guy take it. That's a good one.
Okay. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack with Ethereum. I mean, I think, well, first of all, Ethereum has lost the consumer chain war, if you like, if that was if that was ever a thing. It's lost. Solana has taken that. Solana is now the consumer chain of choice because it's faster. Yes, it's more centralized, but consumers don't care about that. It's got it's got meme coins. It's got cheap. It's fast and cheap. And it's also, and I've banged on about this many times, but it's also got the best, if you like, front end in Phantom Wallet, because Ethereum has MetaMask, and that's all I'm going to say. I'll leave it at that. But yeah, so Ethereum has lost the consumer chain battle. So how does it get back? I think you're probably right. QE will play, or an end to QT will play a part at some point, Ben. But we can't know when that's going to come. So kind of Ethereum specific stuff. I mean, I think Ethereum basically needs to go into sort of full on war mode. Whether that means, I mean, I think probably a leadership change at the Ethereum Foundation would be a good start in that. Vitalik is like, I don't think he's ever pretended to be or really wanted to be, quote unquote, a wartime leader. And I don't think that's the sort of person he is, and I don't think that's the sort of person he wants to be. But Ethereum needs to realize that it can't rely on goodwill and sort of constant upgrading and a sort of a north star of sharding in the future or anything like that. It has to fight for its place, because we all know that crypto is the most is such a competitive landscape. And yeah, so what form that takes, I mean, I think they're making good. I think they've made a good move in creating this Etherealize entity, which is sort of meant to sort of push Ethereum to institutions for institutional adoption, and that is the route. I think that is where Ethereum can win, because institutions are waiting. They want to do. Look at Larry Fink. He wants everything tokenized on chain, and he will get that. That is coming. Institutions want security. They don't care. They won't care if they have to pay, a few dollars in gas fees to move things on the main chain. They want Ethereum security, and that is where Ethereum can win. I think they need to chase that institutional adoption. They need to chase the tokenization of real world assets, and they probably need to look at the layer 2 landscape as well. Like I found a tweet earlier. I'll see if I can find it at some point. But I think recently, it might have even been yesterday, Arbitrum made north of $1 million in fees for one day. Less than $20,000 went to the main chain. So, and that's just one. Okay, it's one of the biggest L2s, but it's one of many. So these L2s are basically parasitic. So I saw another tweet, someone suggesting, maybe tariffs on L2. Tariffs are the word of the moment. Maybe that's maybe Ethereum should take its lead from Donald Trump, start leveling tariffs, because at the moment these L2s are benefiting from Ethereum's, only Bitcoin is more secure than Ethereum. These layer twos are benefiting from Ethereum security, and they're not contributing anything back. And if that continues, and Ethereum doesn't double down on institutional adoption, for instance, then it will lose second place. It will get overtaken by, in market cap by XRP, and possibly by Solana, certainly in adoption and usage by Solana. And what then? It's the sort of thing you wonder. Well, once that slide really begins, can you pull out of that tailspin? I don't know. So there's a lot to do, but it is not impossible. I think Ethereum just needs to get its head down and go into war mode.
Yeah,
That's it.
Sorry, Rob. Do you have anything to add?
No. Yeah. Let me just to go over that. There's some with Ethereum. It's one of those things like we're just writing it off so fast, right? And everybody in the comment section, tell me if you wrote off Solana pretty quickly when it cratered in 2022, and then all of a sudden there was a big use case for it, and then just came roaring back. And now everybody's, it's all about Solana. But if you when I take a look at it, and Guy talked about this 4 or 6 episodes before on NFA Live, and he talked about what's the killer use case? What's the killer use case? And the killer use case is payments. And people don't really think of it that way. They think meme coins, I got to buy this, I got 100x, I got to retire my entire bloodline for this bull market, and that's what's going to be. But I really do think it's going to be, payments, what it is. There was this quote. Yeah, add the screen real quick. When we had this press conference, was it a couple of days ago when David Sachs came out and he talked about, and he had different people there, and he talked about this is what we're going to do, and we're trying to do a Bitcoin strategic reserve, and we'll see the feasibility of it. And he said something that didn't kind of just went over people, and he said we're going to take a look at stable coins. And everyone's like, yeah, who cares, right? Stable coins could be one of the big plays. And if you want to talk about, if we know one thing about Trump, it's he wants America to be great. And for that to be great, he wants the dollar dominance to increase. And in his first term, he said, I do not like crypto. I want the dollar to be number one. But I guess behind closed doors, they figured it out. Maybe we'll just use the stable coins and go from there and string the dollar that way. And I don't know if you have seen this, but stable coins are not just some little pithy thing that doesn't really happen. It's actually happening. I've used it myself. I've used stable coins. I used USDC on Solana, and it worked great. No problems. But the fastest, easiest one I used, it was on Base. And I sent it from Coinbase to somebody else, and it was super cheap and it was super fast, just like Solana, but it's on layer 2. But look at this. If you're taking a look at payments, look at Visa and MasterCard in 2024, that one on the right, that's the amount of transactional value. You're looking at $16 trillion. So why wouldn't you want to get into that? So I know people are like, well, Ethereum sucks and it's slow and it's expensive. Yes, you're exactly right. Unfortunately, it's stable. And I don't know how many times, people can correct me in the comment section, but I don't know how many times Ethereum has gone down, but I can tell you how many times other chains have gone down. And XRP for payments just went down yesterday or 2 days ago. And the CTO said essentially what happened with Ripple was that the consensus mechanism just drifted apart and they couldn't come to a consensus for over an hour. Is that going to spook people? Well, Guy talked about it, and he said if you're a traditional finance provider like BlackRock is and Larry Fink, they want stability and they'll pay for the safety. So when you take a look at stable coins and how much is going on, it's a lot of Ethereum. This is from DeFi Llama. And we're taking a look at total stablecoins market cap, 218 billion. Oops. What do you notice right here? Going across the continuum. There's Ethereum, and then take a look at the layer 2s. Arbitrum, Polygon, Optimism, which is Base as well. Add those up and keep going across the board. And then right here, ZK Sync came into play, Ethereum based. And now look where we're at. Ethereum's 113 billion, Arbitrum, Polygon, others. And I know people are like excited about Solana. I have Solana. I hope it works out well. But over this time frame, it went from 1.7 billion on 5 billion to 10 billion. So it doubled, but that's 5 billion. And I don't really get too excited about that. But lastly, I will say the problem is this. If you think that it's not inflationary, it is. And it just went inflationary. You guys just talked about that. Here's 30 days. Here's after the merge. And essentially the merge is supposed to make it deflationary, and it didn't work like that. And what Guy talked about, maybe there's new leadership on the horizon. I don't know. But if they can just capitalize and just stay the ground, then they can hit this and bring that into stable coins. And then maybe tokenization of real world assets like what Larry Fink is talking about. So I know people have dismissed Ethereum already. I still think it could do well, especially with all layer twos.
To me, I mean, it certainly seems like it's nearing its final stages of capitulation against Bitcoin.
Right.
But you know, a lot of people in the chat were talking about like, you know, what if quantitative easing doesn't ever end this year? You know, I think there's a large part of it is like, you know, the narrative follows the price, right? If ETH Bitcoin were at 0.06 right now, we'd be talking about how great it is, you know. But because it's at 0.02, it's easy to dunk on it, just like it was easy to dunk on Solana back in late 2022. You know, it was so easy. But with that said, I mean, yeah, I guess it sort of just raises that question. I mean, if is QE really needed to give all these alts a chance and to make Bitcoin dominance top out? If that really is the answer and that's what's required, I guess it does raise the question, well, what happens if QE doesn't actually happen this year? You know, like what if it's the cycle where everyone keeps thinking it's going to happen and then it just Powell comes out and says, nope, not going to happen. That could always be the case. I do think that ETH Bitcoin will bottom out, so hopefully sometime soon, and maybe as late as QT ending. But I also, I mean, kind of like what you said, Rob, I don't really think it's dead. And you know, it's also, how many times have we seen throughout the years people say that something's dead? You know, like Bitcoin is dead or Ethereum is dead. I like to go with the quote like, "What is, because it's already died." It's already dead, right? What is dead may never die if it's already dead. So I do think that it will come back at some point, but predicting when that's going to be is really difficult, and I think it's going to depend on, you know, things that are largely outside of the control of the cryptoverse, like monetary policy. So we'll see what happens with it. I do want to pivot, unlike the Fed has done, over to the strategic reserve. I haven't really followed the news that closely. I know that, you know, coming into this year, there was a lot of talk about a strategic Bitcoin reserve, and then it seems like the odds of that happening, at least within the first 90 days, have dropped off. So I'm curious, do you guys think it's going to happen? Could it be something that still happens this year? Or is it going to be like the spot ETF? And we all know what happened there. Like we were talking about it back in like 2016, and then we didn't actually get it until 2024. You know, could that happen? Could it be one of those things where we think it's about to happen and then it just keeps getting delayed? I got to be honest. I mean, to me, it seems like if it's going to happen, this would be the administration for it to happen under, right? If it's not going to happen under this administration, you know, how are we going to get even more crypto friendly than this in terms of, you know, the administration's thoughts about the cryptoverse? So, Guy, I'll start with you on this one. Well, you know, what do you think the odds are?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think, well, off the top of my head, when I last looked at Polymarket, which was this morning, I think the odds on Polymarket 14% for an SBR in the first 100 days, and a 46% chance of an SBR this year. And I think actually that 46% is pretty high. What I find really interesting, and we've seen this over the last, particularly over the last few days, we seem to have gone from strategic Bitcoin reserve to digital asset stockpile And then David Sachs giving his press conference, was it yesterday or the day before, studying the feasibility. And I think that I kind of think that tells us a lot. That sounds to me like this whole idea is sort of slowly being kind of watered down. It's like, yes, I know we talked about, I know the president kind of mentioned that, but we'll study the feasibility. I mean, that's the sort of thing, that reminds me of when I was a kid and I would ask my mum if I could have this, that, or the other, and she would say, we'll see, we'll see. And studying the feasibility sounds a lot like, yeah, we'll see, we'll see. So there's that. The language seems to be slowly being kind of watered down. And then we've got things like, we had just recently the Genius Act was unveiled. So this is an act that aims to create a regulatory framework for stablecoins. And that is interesting as well, because we know how big a fan Donald Trump is of Bitcoin, but we know for sure that he's a really big fan of the US dollar. And I think this is something that US politicians, I think they were waking up to that before Trump took office. And I think they're really becoming aware of it now, especially now that, the Republicans have got majorities. Well, I shouldn't, yes, the Republicans have majorities, but both the Senate and the House are more pro-crypto. And that, there are Democrat politicians who are pro-crypto as well. But I think they're starting to realize that David Sachs, I think, said as much. The US dollar is strengthened by stablecoins, and it not only increases the reach of the US dollar if you're having all these people in other countries transacting in USDC, USDT, whatever it is, but obviously those stablecoin issuers have to go and buy US Treasuries. Every time you buy a stablecoin, you are indirectly buying US government debt. And I think US politicians and Donald Trump are well aware of that. And I think that is going to be much more of a priority for them, to push stablecoin adoption. And that is a good thing. That will open up a whole load of new use cases for crypto. It will open up a whole load of new innovation. And it will be fantastic. And it will genuinely, Rob, you were talking earlier. You've used stablecoins. I've used stablecoins as well. We all have. They're great, and they will make life easier. They already are making life easier for a lot of people. So when it comes to a strategic Bitcoin reserve, there's now talk about, they were talking about a sovereign wealth fund, weren't they? And yeah, maybe Bitcoin could be integrated into, maybe that could have some BTC behind it. But and there's been good arguments made by Nick Carter and others, excuse me, against the idea of a strategic Bitcoin reserve. And I just can't. I myself can't see it. I don't know why the US would want to do that. And okay, if they do decide to do it, they're certainly not going to tell us that they're doing it. They're going to do it in, because otherwise that will just light a fire under the price, and they won't be able to get there anything like a good entry. So I think what's happening with stablecoins, what's happening with regulations being drawn up, that I think is what we should be keeping an eye on.
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, I saw there's an interesting comment. Maybe the ECB might introduce QE, given their current rate is as low as 2.9, and the euro economy is a steaming pile of. It looks like whatever they meant to say got cut off.
Oh, of course.
Spaghetti.
Yeah, spaghetti.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
But it actually is sort of a reminder that the world is, I'm just an ignorant American. I focus on what's going on over here, but the Bank of Canada is ending quantitative tightening. I guess that's happening, even though the Fed's not. No, but it's interesting. I mean, Guy, you're right. I mean, look, we came in with this year with the narrative of a strategic Bitcoin reserve, and then, like we always do in the post-halving year, we lose our way and we start talking about altcoins. And it's kind of the same thing in terms of narratives as 2021 and 2017. Now, price action is obviously different for the altcoin market right now than 2021, but the narratives are starting to kind of come to the surface as to, people sort of losing their way and focusing on other things. And that's not to suggest that all altcoins are bad. And I'm certainly not talking about anyone else's altcoin in the chat. Everyone else says it's not in the stream. That's who we're talking about. But
Exactly.
yeah, no, it's always an interesting year, the post-halving year, and how those narratives do eventually change. Rob, what are your thoughts? I mean, I know with the spot ETF, I remember back in, many years ago, you were pretty quick to say, like, it's not going to happen as early as quickly as people think it is. And it took a lot longer. I mean, it took years and years and years before it happened. Do you think that the reserve's going to be the same thing? Like, is it going to be one of these things where it's going to be like, 2030, and we're going to be like, all right, any day now, it's going to happen?
I think, I just saw a quote from Hester Pierce, which talked about the SEC and the legislation against different crypto companies. And she said, look, give us time, be patient, because we have to untangle a huge mess. So if everybody thought, well, once Gary's gone, the SEC will rebound and be like, beautiful for crypto and digital assets. And of course, we see it's not the exact opposite. It's just going to take a lot longer than we thought. But like we've always said, it's always about, and we've talked about this before, the states will do it first, and then it'll get up to the governmental level, and then we'll see what happens. But there's this image of the United States, and you can see like the different states that they haven't approved it yet. They've gone through committees, they've gone through their own state Congress, and they haven't approved it through the final majority vote. So they've just kind of introduced this, and then it's gotten out of not of Congress, out of their individual parts to see like if it would actually go to get actually voted on. And so far it hasn't. And we can see, like Guy talked about, poly market chances are going down. But I was pretty excited about this. Texas Strategic Bitcoin Reserve signed in 2025, 48% chance. I would bet on that as opposed to like the government coming out and saying it. So yeah, maybe the first one will be Texas, and we'll go from there. But yeah, it's going to take some time, and that's just how it is. But that's good, because then you'll see like another 20 different videos from everybody talking about the strategic reserves right on the corner. Just keep buying that dip.
Yeah.
I think I was talking with
Yeah,
go ahead.
I was just gonna add my sort of left field prediction is that I think maybe a workaround for this for the US government could be, rather than accumulating Bitcoin on the open market or buying OTC or whatever like that, I wonder whether we might see some sort of national Bitcoin mining operation set up. Because Trump has said before he wants to see all Bitcoin made in the USA. And I wonder whether they might do that. Like that's something. It's perhaps a little bit far fetched, but I'm going to stick my neck out and make that as my prediction for how this thing is resolved, if you like. Because I feel like they need a worker. I feel like Trump sort of said strategic reserve, and then the crypto community jumped on it and went, oh yes, yeah, that's what we need, strategic reserve. We need, strategic reserve. We'll all go to the moon. And it's like, the sort of reality of what that means has kind of dawned, and they're like, how are we gonna row back on this? My guess, they start mining it. The American Bitcoin Mining Corporation or something.
Guy, the only way that would happen, I think, is if we are able to actually produce enough electricity to make that happen. And what we have now, we are lacking, especially if I think it was $500 million for OpenAI to be the AI epicenter here in the States. How much power that's going to take? This would be up Ben's alley. How much nuclear power do we have to produce? Because that's not coming from wind. I'm sorry. We have to produce so much. I think I don't understand why we can't just get back into nuclear power like we had before and build that out. But
probably another form of deregulation or less regulation would be helpful for that industry, but it's kind of understandable. I mean, a lot of people got scared by some of the big accidents that happened, right? 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl. You have these events that happen, and then people get scared, and they're scared for like the next several decades, and then it takes a while for like a new generation to not have that same bad taste in their mouth for nuclear power. I do think nuclear would offer a lot. I think the next, the way we do really well as a society as a whole is to solve our energy problems. And if we can ever make fusion economically viable, think about, that would just change everything. Because right now, the reactors that are commercially viable for nuclear are all fission reactors, not fusion reactors. And fusion would actually be a game changer. We could talk a little bit more about this stuff, but it is getting later on. I have one more question, and then I want to, or I guess 2 more. But I do want, if you guys have questions in the chat, go ahead and ask them, and that way we'll have them for a little bit later. One question I have, and this is, it could be one of those things that it's being just a little bit short-sighted and not being patient enough. But if this is truly the golden age of crypto, why, when's the market going to realize that, Bitcoin's been dropping basically since inauguration, right? If we're honest with ourselves, right? It actually hasn't gone up since the new administration took office. And is this one of those things where, like, in a few weeks, we're going to look back and be like, yeah, it just needed to cool off for a little bit, kind of like last year? Or what do you think's going on? Like, I guess, what's the reason? Is it just to buy the rumor, sell the news, and then wait to see if something actually happens? Or is something else going on? So, Rob, what are your thoughts on this? If it's the golden age of crypto, when's crypto going to realize that?
I don't know. I'm just going to say there's more sellers than there are buyers, and that's all I can tell you. Because it seems like every time the narrative comes out, it kind of gets a little bit debunked, and then we go the opposite way. So, like, for me, like, when are people going to realize it? It's anybody's guess. I will say that if you want to see where the markets are going, just look how many longs and shorts and options are, and then you'll see just people getting liquidated by the exchanges, and that's the way it's going to go. So that's what I'll say. I think people are smart enough to figure it out, but God dang, we got to get away from these meme coins. That's it.
Yeah. So far, the president launching his own meme coin kind of marked the top.
Yeah.
So far. Do you guys remember that day when it launched and it sucked all the liquidity out of the altcoin market? Like, the altcoin market was doing okay. And then when that meme coin launched, and a lot of that liquidity went over into that coin. And then ever since then, a lot of those coins have actually struggled. It was definitely an interesting event. Hopefully the market can pick back up. But let's go ahead and I did want to add one thing about the last thing we talked about. I was talking with at a Sailor's party in Miami. I was talking with Dennis Porter, and he was saying that the strategic reserve will likely start at the state level, not the federal level, and that at the federal level they'll use sort of it having been done at the state level as sort of a reason to then get it to the federal level. So it's sort of like a natural stepping stone. State level first, then federal. So I think it was Rob talking about what you had the map up. It might just simply be that it needs to happen more at the state level first before it's ever going to happen at the federal level. I have one more question. Would you rather fight one big personified Bitcoin or a dominant, really dominant personified Bitcoin? Because, speaking about Bitcoin dominance, right? And this isn't just some small personified Bitcoin you're going up to. Or would you rather fight 100 personified alts that are not nearly as dominant as Bitcoin? Guy, what would you rather fight?
I've got a question for you, Ben. Is what were you smoking when you came up with this question? It's
That's
brilliant.
A good question.
That's a good question.
Well,
That's a good question.
yeah. We'll get an answer out of you for the end of the stream. I was thinking about this because I can't get away now from the fact that Michael Saylor is he is Bitcoin's he is Satoshi's representative on Earth, isn't he? So he is Bitcoin personified. So would I rather fight Michael Saylor in full Michael Saylor mode? I think that would be a pretty scary proposition. I think he'd just he'd whoop my ass. So yeah, but then, like, what do I get to choose which personified alts I fight? Do I have to go up against like top 100 ones, or can I pick some pick some of the sort of soy boy
it's
shit
just-
coins lower down the thing?
a basket of whatever Reddit shilled that week.
Okay.
Reddit show,
Okay.
very nice.
Yeah, I was trying to think how like some coins are personified. Like I've always imagined XRP to be like a former Navy SEAL with like a divorced and with drink problems. So I wouldn't want to fight that. But like some of the others, like Ethereum. I mean, that's Vitalik. I could take him. So yeah, I think I'd have to go. I think I'd have to go for all the nonsense, because you just end like if it's what Reddit's shilling, you just end up fighting a bunch of stupid dogs and frogs and things with hat. I could take on some cute little puppies in a hat. I'm not that past it yet.
Yeah. It seems a little easier than dominant Bitcoin coming up to you. Rob, what do you think?
Yeah, same thing. I'll say quick altcoin. I mean, give me the 100 altcoins because most of them are going to shut down mid-round because they just can't keep up with the transactions. And then after that, then all the validators will come in there and try to prep them in, and they'll shut down again. So yeah, I'll go for the altcoins to see what happens.
That's a fair point. I mean, probably 80% of the altcoins will just rug themselves.
Exactly. Like what happened? I fell. What was the rug? I'm sorry.
They just knocked themselves out. So Ben, did you have a few Jack Daniels and Coke and come up with that, or did one of your kids suggest it? Where did that question come from?
It did not come from my kids. I think it came from there was a question in like high school that I remember, like when I was in high school, people were like asking at one point, and it was like, would you rather fight what was it?
It was like a superhero.
Oh no, I know what it is. I think this was the question. It was, would you rather fight one horse-sized chicken?
Okay.
Just think about it. Would you rather? Bear with me for a minute.
Would
you rather fight one horse-sized chicken or 100 chicken-sized horses?
Oh, that's first of all. Are you serious? Have you seen how aggressive chickens are? Look here. Okay, so you're in Puerto Rico. I wake up to roosters and chickens every day, and let me tell you, like if you don't get out of their way, they'll not the chickens, but they're like little carnivores. They'll try to eat everything they possibly can. I'm not fighting a horse-sized chicken. And yeah, we're all sober. No one's smoking weed. Whoever said that in the comment section was pretty funny. But yeah, no, hell no. I would take the 100 horses.
I think I'm like, I might have gotten the animals wrong. Like I can't remember exactly what it was, but it is something like that. The question was something like that, where like, would you rather fight like the one big thing that would be pretty easy to fight if it's small, or would you rather fight the 100 smaller things that would be really hard to fight if it was just one big one?
Yes. Yeah. Got it. That was
horse-sized chicken would be terrifying. The beak on that thing would just
it would tear you. It would kill you.
It'd be like a like a T-Rex, with like the little arms and everything.
Yeah, and then just get plucked all day long.
I mean, it would be great if you could get it to lay eggs.
Someone says there's ducks.
It'd solve that egg problem you've got there.
Someone says it was ducks and not chickens.
Okay. So
that is different. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, ducks are much more chilled, I think.
Yeah. Well, I'd
still take 100 duck-sized horses.
Yeah. What kind of horse coin dominance would you get there? I don't know if I could go through with that.
All right. Let's see if we can get in some actual questions here.
That was a good one.
Let's see.
This is what people come for.
I'm trying to find.
See, Ben, this is what you do. You ask the question. Now it's gonna be all Ben's. It's all gonna be ducks and chickens and horses.
Yeah.
Just like when you did the last question for the theme song of Into the Cryptoverse, and we were here for 20 minutes, which was pretty funny actually.
Someone said they came for the alpha. They left because of the horse-sized chickens.
Fair enough.
I can't blame them. I mean, like I can't blame them. I don't know. I'm not really seeing. I'm not. You guys. I asked you guys to ask questions, and you guys are just talking about chickens for some reason.
But that's because they're going to go to pump.fun and make Ben Chicken Horse meme coin.
Let me
don't blame
think.
you,
Someone say
Any
this is
thoughts
the alpha I
on-
came for. So
Any thoughts on alts against ETH, like alt ETH pairs?
Like which one's going to run up in pairs and
No, I don't think which one. I think just like the collective altcoin market versus Ethereum. Instead, because normally we measure it out in terms of like Bitcoin.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess the question is more so with Ethereum.
I mean, I think you know, sentiment out there is bad. Sentiment is really bad in the market in general around everything. You know, not quite so much around Bitcoin because it's still fairly strong relative to everything else, especially ETH. But like sentiment is bad. But sentiment around ETH is the worst I've seen it ever. So if you're coming at it from a purely sentiment angle, then I would say that there's others would definitely have some strength against ETH. Like, but it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. You know, Ethereum is not cooked, but it's at an inflection point. I think it's at a pivotal moment. Like this is the point where it either sort of turns things around and charges to glory in the long run, or it begins a decline an inexorable decline. So yeah, but sentiment around Ethereum is terrible, that's for sure.
True.
Do you have anything to add, Rob?
I was just looking at the heat map, and it's not as, I mean, it's bad. It's not as bad as far as like price action over like 7-day.
Can you click on top 200 instead of top 50?
Yeah.
And this is against ETH, guys. This is not US dollars.
Yeah. See the currency here. And like for 7 days, I mean, it's a lot of red. So against that, of course, Bitcoin is a...
Yeah, go to like a year or 200 days or something.
Yeah, 200 days is going to, 30 days is going to show you half and half, but 200 days is going to show you that you should have not, been in ETH. And then 1 year, I think even worse. Not too bad. But that's like, I mean, Chainlink, some of these I just don't, it's a weird thing because like we always talk about utility. Chainlink it's partnered up with, it seems like almost all or a ton of different crypto projects, and they're all being used for an oracle, yet that price is stuck. So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like for me, it seems like, I mean, if QT were over, then I feel like we likely are already at near the bottom for ETH Bitcoin. I think there's a good chance we'll look back in a year and realize this was pretty close to the low. But it's so hard to get those exact bottoms, and it's sort of it's been a falling knife for so long. I think last cycle it was when ETH USD sort of broke its higher low support during quantitative tightening. That's when ETH Bitcoin finally started to do well. So as one of these things I've talked about with some of the people on my channel, I'm like, in order for ETH Bitcoin to start doing well, ETH has to have pain on its USD pair, but it's been unable to really have that pain on its USD pair because Bitcoin just keeps going up, right? So it's like, in order for ETH maxis to get what they want, Bitcoin needs to get a correction, because as long as Bitcoin keeps going up, Bitcoin's just going to keep outperforming ETH. You need to see something happen in the market to justify, I think, a change in monetary policy. And I saw someone refer to this as and I thought it was kind of true, like sort of like a zombie bull market where Bitcoin and a few alts are doing well, but a lot of other alts are just kind of like zombies where they're begrudgingly going a little bit higher if Bitcoin goes higher. But then the minute Bitcoin, sneezes, the altcoin market catches a flu, like it's just, a really different market than I think what people experienced in 2020 and 2021. So let's see. Any other questions?
Ben, someone reminding in the chat that do you have a to my question earlier to you, do you have a call on how high you think Bitcoin dominance could go? I mean, I know that's a very, very difficult question, so
yeah, so
I don't want to put you on the spot, but
no, it's fine. I mean, like, that's why we're here. I think I mean, look, ETH Bitcoin could go lower, but I don't think it's going to go that much lower. I think if it does go lower, it'll only be slightly lower. So I don't think a lot of the dominance move is going to come from ETH at this point. But I think the biggest thing, and I've sort of rambled about this for way too long, in over the last like 3 years, but I think the biggest thing is this chart here. This is total 3 minus USDT divided by Bitcoin, right? And I think about altcoins are oscillators at best against Bitcoin, and this is alt Bitcoin pairs, and so like ultimately where they've historically bottomed, excluding this deviation right here, or ultimately they bottomed around 0.25. So when the altcoin market cap is about 1/4 of Bitcoin's market cap, it just went down to 0.33, right? So it is getting low. It's not that far off from 0.25. So I think you could argue that if Bitcoin dominance goes higher, it could be because all Bitcoin pairs finally closed that gap right there, right? The same gap they closed, right here. And then a lot of us look at last cycle, but if you look at the 2016, 2017 cycle, which this cycle has a lot of similarities to, all Bitcoin pairs were actually at 0.25 in November of 2017, So it's not like it's impossible for, all Bitcoin pairs to kind of just bounce around this trend line, eventually capitulate, and then go up later on. The alt season that people remember in 2021, in 2017 didn't really happen until the very end of the year, right? Whereas in 2021, it happened at the beginning of the year. So I think that for going back to Bitcoin dominance, I mean, I think that to close that gap, if ETH Bitcoin doesn't bounce, obviously Bitcoin dominance could go higher. As far as an exact number, that's incredibly difficult to know. You could look at, I mean, the way 60% seemed like the obvious sort of conservative level was basically just the unwind of the alt Bitcoin bubble, right? Where the bubble began right there, came down, and then just sort of returned back to where it all began. But there's one thing to look. There's one other thing to look at. If you look at like the fib retracement stuff, it actually has sort of stalled out whenever it reaches a new level. So like you can see it sort of stalled out when it reached the 0.382, and then stalled out when it reached the 0.5, and then stalled out when it reached the 618. The next level would be the 786, and that's right around 66%. So if you see alt Bitcoin pairs go down to 0.25, that would likely get Bitcoin dominance to that level, right around 66%. And there's another thing you can look at too, and that's Bitcoin dominance plus ETH dominance plus USDT dominance plus USDC dominance. This chart, for whatever reason, has a habit of always going back to 82%. And anytime it starts to, it did the same thing last cycle where it kind of dropped off for a while, but it always would then go back up to 82%, and then it didn't go down to the bottom. Right, you didn't get your alt season until after that 82% level was kind of taken out, and then it sort of liquidated everyone on alt Bitcoin pairs, and then finally alt season began. But until that occurred, anytime this metric went down, it would then occasionally just spike back up to that 82% level, and that's exactly where it just spiked a few moments ago. Last thing I'll say, and then we can wrap up. Bitcoin dominance plus, you guys got me. See, this is what you guys do. Hey, Bitcoin dominance plus USDT dominance spiked up to around 69%. Last cycle, it topped at 74. Okay. But again, you know, there's other stable coins now, right? There's USDC and there's a few others that make up some of that. So I don't necessarily expect it to go back up to 76%, which is where it topped out at in January 2021. But you can kind of see that all this stuff is an oscillator. And by the way, one last thing, gosh, I can't stop. But if you look at ETH market cap divided by Bitcoin market cap, isn't it sort of proof that all are oscillators at best, right? Like even the number 2 cryptocurrency, you know, and this is one of those things where like whenever it's at the highs, no one ever thinks it's going to go to the lows. And then whenever it's at the lows, we never think it's going to go to the highs. And now it's getting, you know, pretty close to those lows again, which everyone thinks is dead, right? Anytime it comes down here, it's dead. And then anytime it comes up here, people are talking about the flippening, and there's no middle ground, you know? So I would watch that. But why don't we go ahead and wrap it up? Because it's after 10. Let's go ahead and wrap it up. Guys, if you're not subscribed to Guy or Rob, make sure you guys go subscribe to them. Links are in the description below. And I guess we'll see you guys on Rob's channel next week.
All right, guys. Thanks.
All right. Let's see you guys.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Ben.